Skeptics love to tell Christians that the gospel stories developed over time, adding more mythological elements as they went along. Matthew and Luke copied Mark, plus added a few more fables. And then you get to John's gospel, which is total theological fanfiction according to the critics. But if this is true, why do the gospels have little interlocking details that seem to be unlikely if they were copied from each other or some other common source? The gospels frequently add passing details that answer a question raised by the other in a way that fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. Fictions and forgeries don't normally work this way. Some scholars call these undesigned coincidences. So what in the heck is an undesigned coincidence anyway? Philosopher Lydia McGrew defines an undesigned coincidence as a notable connection between two or more accounts or texts that don't seem to have been planned by the person giving the accounts. The term was first coined by William Paley and popularized by J.J. Blunt in the 19th century. Allow me to give you some examples of these from the Gospels. I want you to notice that all of these come from the Passion and Resurrection accounts, which are a big fat target for the skeptics. So to start off, while on trial, Jesus was accused of plotting terrorism against the temple. Mark 14:58 reads, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.'" Later, while on the cross, Mark 15:29 says, "And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, 'Aha, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days.'" But if we're just reading Mark, we don't have a clue where they were even getting this accusation from. However, we do find the answer in John 2:18 through 19. After cleansing the temple, some Jews said to him, "What sign do you show us for doing these things?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." What's weird about this is that nowhere in John's gospel is Jesus accused of plotting terrorism against the temple. All John does is tell us that Jesus was referring to the temple as his body, which he'd later resurrect. The words of Jesus got twisted by his enemies, and neither story is copied from the other, and it all has the ring of truthful testimony. Let me give you another example. Here's Matthew 26:67 through 68, which reads, "Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fist. Others slapped him and said, 'Prophesy to us, Messiah, who hit you?'" Rude move, but why would he have to prophesy if he could see who was hitting him? We find the answer in Luke, who lets us know that Jesus was blindfolded. Are you beginning to pick up what I'm laying down now? Let's look at two more from Jesus' trial before Pilate. Luke 23:2 through 4 says, "And they began to accuse him, saying, 'We found this man misleading our nation, and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king.' And Pilate said, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' And he answered him, 'You've said so.' Then Pilate said to the chief priests and crowds, 'I find no guilt in this man.'" Whoa, hold up. Pump your brakes, boo. What exactly is happening here? The Jews made a very serious accusation against Jesus of being a king, and Jesus owns the charge. He admits, "Yeah, I am the king of the Jews." Pilate's response is, "I find no fault in this man." What in the world is going on here? Well, we find out if we turn to John 18:33 through 38. John is even a little more strange. Pilate's question about whether or not Jesus is the king of the Jews comes seemingly out of nowhere. Here's the text. It says, "Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' Jesus answered, 'My kingdom is not of this world.' Pilate went back outside to the Jews and told them, 'I find no guilt in him.'" Why would he even think that Jesus was claiming to be a king? John doesn't fill us in. Luke, on the other hand, gives us the complete accusation, but not the full answer. Jesus is a spiritual king. He's not interested in worldly power. So here we have Luke explaining a dangling detail left by John, and John doing the same for Luke. These two accounts fit together like two pieces of a puzzle, and it's evidence that they were truthful and their sources were close up to the facts. But hang on a second. Didn't Peter get his sword bloody when the soldiers came to arrest Jesus? John 18:10 says that Peter cut off Malchus's ear, who was the high priest's servant. Surely that's gotta count as fighting. But Jesus left no physical evidence of the struggle, so there's no arrest. In Luke 22:51, we read that he touched Malchus's ear and healed him. Don't tell me that God doesn't heal amputees. Luke is the only one that tells us that Jesus healed the servant's ear, even though Matthew and Mark both mention it. This detail is confirmed by an undesigned coincidence that reinforces John and Luke's separate reports of the events of Jesus' passion and trial. Moving on to the burial accounts. All four Gospels tell us that Joseph of Arimathea buried Jesus. Mark tells us that Joseph took courage when he asked Pilate for Jesus' corpse. As a member of the Sanhedrin, this makes sense as Jesus was crucified for blasphemy, so he would definitely be sticking his neck out. Mark's account is sympathetic for Joseph, but why exactly would a council member be so bold to ask for Jesus' body? Well, the Gospel of John supplies us the answer. In John 19:38 through 39, it says, "After After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly for fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate gave him permission. So he came and took away the body. Nicodemus also, who earlier came to Jesus by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds in weight. John highlights the lack of overall boldness, the exact opposite of Mark. Joseph finally gets the gall to make his discipleship known, but only after Jesus' death. These two differing treatments show independence of outlook and information. They're not copying from each other. But what about this tomb? Luke and John tell us that Joseph buried Jesus in a grave that had never been used. Luke 23:53 says, "Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb cut in the rock, one in which no one had been laid." John fills us in even more. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. John implies that the tomb was picked because it was nearby, but hang on a second, convenience can't be the only reason why Joseph could have access to the tomb. So what exactly is going on here? Well, Matthew fills us in. He says that Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb, which he had cut out of the rock. Matthew, a money-minded tax collector, is the only gospel writer to tell us that Joseph was rich, and he tells us it was Joseph's own tomb. Mark doesn't tell us that the tomb was unused or that it was Joseph's own tomb, so Matthew couldn't have got his information from Mark. So here Matthew explains Luke and John. Luke and John don't tell us that it was Joseph's own tomb, but agree that no one had ever used it before. John alone tells us about Joseph's secret discipleship, how near the tomb was, and that it was in a garden, and all about the spices used in the burial. But we all know that Jesus' story didn't end there. John gives us the somewhat funny detail that he outran Peter to Jesus' tomb. Why didn't he enter after winning the footrace? Peter entered the tomb first, probably because most of the disciples were scared of spirits. If you remember when Jesus was walking on the water, they cried out, "It is a spirit," Matthew 14:26. But Peter had always been bold and brash. He had the guts to walk on water when the others didn't, but his brashness sometimes got him in trouble, which ties us into our final undesigned coincidence. After the resurrection, Jesus comes across as, well, a bit of a jerk to Peter. In John's Gospel we read, "When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' Jesus said, 'Feed my lambs.'" And this situation repeats for another 2 times. So why does Jesus ask Peter if he loves him more than all the other disciples? We find the answer in Mark 14:29. Peter declared, "Even if all fall away, I will not." Mark records Peter's bragging about how he loved Jesus more than anybody else. If John was just making a story alluding to an earlier event, why doesn't he include the story from Mark that makes the connection so much more obvious? But if he simply remembered what happened as it happened, he might see no need to go back and explain. So what exactly is the lesson here? The gospel writers leave natural loose ends untied that other writers interlock in a way that's obviously unintentional. These are exactly what we'd expect to find with detailed records of real events from different people who knew what they were talking about. And while these are throughout the Gospels, notice that they're clustered around some of the events that the critics dispute. Details about Jesus' trial, his burial, and most importantly, his resurrection.